my name is Linda Carbino, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Walking Through Life. Today I have two very special guests. First of all, I have my wonderful husband, Ted Carbino. Hi, Ted.
Hi.
And I have licensed clinical social worker Joyce Perkins, who's going to be on the show a few times, helping people talk about their stories. So I'd like to welcome both of you, and if I could, I'd like to start with Ted. And could you tell us what kind of mental illness that you suffer from?
Nerve problems.
Is it, what's it called?
Schizophrenia.
There you go.
Schizophrenia problems.
And now, how long have you had that, do you know?
27 years.
And how old were you when it started?
23.
23. And you were sharing with me earlier that you didn't know what was going on when it first happened to you, when you first started hearing the voices.
Yeah.
What was going on for you at that time?
First time I heard voices, it scared me.
Scared you?
Didn't know what it was.
And that's common with people with
Yeah.
schizophrenia.
Yeah.
So what did you do when this all started? Was that when you left home or before that?
That was before I left home. I lived with my father in Windsor, Vermont, 1980.
1980.
Yeah.
And I know you shared with me and Joyce too that you had traveled around the country.
Yeah, I traveled around the country. Went to Grand Ole Opry in Nashville.
I bet you like that. Who'd you see there?
Jimmy Dickens, Crystal Gale, and Retta Lynn, all of them. Quite a few.
Quite a few.
Over 100 of them.
And well, while you were there, and I know that Ted has shared that he got put in jail a few times because they assumed that he was drunk. And you were sharing with me, Joyce, that that's a common thought with people with schizophrenia. Now, do you know why that is?
Well, basically because they start talking to themselves, and people think they're talking to them. And when a person approaches someone who's actually talking to themselves, they sometimes get a little angry. And so when they get angry, Linda, they're not making any sense. They can't answer your question. So somebody will keep asking them something like, "What is your name?" And the person has a train of thought of exactly what they're saying because they're talking to themselves. They're hearing a voice. They're actually answering a voice in their head. So when someone outside is talking to them, it gets them really frustrated, and that really shows up. So they start getting really angry, and people get to be afraid. They're kind of nervous. They think, oh, we need to protect the person, but also we need to protect the community as well. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes, a person who is walking around and they're schizophrenic also oftentimes will look like someone who has been drinking or is on drugs, because oftentimes they will also stumble. They will be weaving, or and some of that is pacing. Sometimes they'll pace, because sometimes that calms people down. Now, I don't know if for Ted, if pacing or walking helps him.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say, is that I know from Ted too, is that he doesn't like to sit still very often, and he enjoys riding his bike. He enjoys that. He enjoys going for walking, from what I've seen. And I also wanted to mention too is that I'm able to notice when Ted's getting sick, because and maybe even before he does, because I can start seeing him talking to himself. Mm-hmm. And but I think that's something that I can see in him, and at the same sense, Ted can see when I'm getting sick.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So and I think that we help each other that way, you know.
And it's important, Linda, for the people who are around people that are schizophrenic, not to be frightened of them, because one of the problems is the minute the caregiver or the people around them gets frightened, it also triggers fright in the person who is experiencing these voices, and so then they become even more uncontrollable, and they know they can't seem to bring those voices down no matter what they do. And they oftentimes don't even recognize the people in their lives. So, and I'm talking specifically about people who are not on medication. And people that are on medication have cues. They have people that can understand them.
Right.
They know exactly and the biggest thing is to just be present with them.
Yeah.
You don't have to really say a whole lot. Just be present with them.
Yeah.
Right. And I know with Ted too that it's easy to know when he needs to take a rest or he needs to, because I think, don't you agree with me, Ted?
Yeah.
What helps him a lot when you do hear voices and stuff is a lot of just peace and quiet.
Yeah. Peace and quiet.
Peace and quiet, or listening to very low music like country music, because Ted's a
Yeah.
country music fan.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about that too. When you were traveling around the country, you were working for, was it Dolly Parton's sister?
Dolly Parton's half sister.
Half sister. Yeah.
Gail Parton.
Gail Parton.
On a farm that 200 milking head.
Wow.
Wow, that's a lot.
So what did you do there?
Went haying. Loaded 900 bales.
You did.
Yeah. Fill up the barn full of hay.
Wow.
Yeah.
I bet that was stinky.
No. Hay. Hay's pretty good.
Yeah. I also wanted to say too is that in December Ted is going to be 50 years old, and he's going to be celebrating his 8 years sober.
Yeah.
So and I'm very proud of him. When I first met Ted, he was drinking. Now, Ted, I wanted to see if you could share with us what it was that helped you decide to go and get help for the first time.
Oh, just got scared hearing voices and need help. To help yourself first
That's right.
before you go and get help. My brother mentioned Southeastern mental health
Yeah, HRS.
advertised in the newspaper. And my brother bring me down to mental health that day.
What year was that?
91.
91.
Yeah.
Is that when you first started getting Social Security?
Yeah.
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 And I wanted to comment too and ask Joyce about this too, is that a couple of years ago when my mom had passed away and I'd gotten so sick, when I ended up in the hospital, it wasn't but a couple of days later that Ted ended up in the hospital. That's common when you both suffer from mental illness?
Yes, and the other thing is, Ted, actually, you became his anchor. And oftentimes, particularly if people do get put on medication so that they're beginning to get regulated, they also form attachments and anchors to people. And if those anchors or those pieces are taken away, the voices come back. Even if they're on medication, oftentimes those voices come back because they're feeling scared.
Yeah.
And it's that fear that kind of drives them. It's that emotional upheaval, and they don't know how to cope with that.
You know that's what was strange to me though, is when I was in the hospital and he was in the hospital, we weren't allowed to see each other, and that I think made us both worse. And I think that our doctor agreed with that after we came out.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, and that's something that the new law that they have for the advanced directive, I think it's called the Lilisi law.
Mm-hmm.
You have an opportunity to put in there what your wishes are if you do go in the hospital, whether it's mental health or whatever. And Ted and I both came to the decision that we were going to do that because we wanted to make sure that something like this did not happen again, and that's something that you can stipulate in that.
It's a good idea, Linda, because it's quite unusual that both
Yeah.
people would be in the hospital at the same time. And ordinarily, the place that the hospital really likes actually to have caregivers, the people that are around the person to support them, really likes to have them come in.
Yeah.
Because it's very helpful to the staff, and it's very settling for the person who has to be in the hospital.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you can address that, Ted. How comforting it was or was not for you.
Well, I was kind of go hospital and they give you change your meds, rest. You know, helps out big time. Darkness.
Mm-hmm. And it's scary to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're schizophrenic, it is.
It's very scary to go there.
Yeah.
And I think once we were allowed to see each other, because, you know, I had been under the impression that Ted didn't want anything to do with me, you know. So I think when I walked in and we saw each other, it was like, wow, here we are finally together again.
Mm-hmm.
It was like such a relief for me, and I know it was for him. And they had a cigarette patch on him. He smokes. So I went out and I told the doctor, I said, you know, it would be nice if we could arrange it so he could go outside and have a cigarette. So the doctor says, how much does he smoke? So I told them, they said, oh, okay. And then they figured out how much coffee he drank.
Yeah.
So then they told me, you know, instead of making him go through the withdrawals for both of those, that when he did go down and have a cigarette, that he could get a cup of coffee at the same time. So that worked out pretty good. And I wanted to talk a little bit too, Joyce, about when I first met Ted and how scared I was.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was under the assumption, because I had been with another man that had schizophrenia that was extremely violent.
Yes.
So it was hard for me to allow Ted in because I thought he was going to be the same way, when actually Ted is just the opposite. Mm-hmm. And I've never seen him violent at all. If anything, I'd say it was more passive.
Yeah.
Very quiet, very withdrawn. And so I was thinking, with that comment made, that my reaction to that is there's two different types.
Actually, one of the things that you're talking about, Linda, is that oftentimes schizophrenics have a real hard time with people in their space. They're very space conscious. And so some people, depending upon their experiences as to whether people have entered their space unwillingly, or people have come onto them, or people have been angry with them, or if a person has been accepted and has had somebody say, I understand, I'm not going to come any closer to you, I'm going to honor your space. That makes a huge difference, Linda, in what that person then does later when they meet someone else. One of the issues for people who are schizophrenic is that oftentimes, by the time they get diagnosed, which for Ted, he said it was 23, there's a very strong possibility that Ted actually was experiencing many of the other symptoms earlier than 23. And what happens is, when that happens as teenagers, they don't learn social skills. So they don't learn social cues. So they don't know how to say, excuse me, back up a little bit. They don't know how to do that. And so then these voices come very loud and start telling them about themselves, about all the things that they aren't good at.
And you know, that's another thing that I want to say about me and Ted being close, is that he's able to communicate to me.
Absolutely.
When he doesn't feel safe around a certain person or whatever, he'll automatically say, I don't like them. I don't like them. Mm-hmm. You know, or don't have them here anymore. And I'll know right away that it bothers him. Mm-hmm. So I'll know not to bring that person back.
Yeah. And I think one of the things you're talking about, Linda, is you're talking about that he has learned to trust you.
Yeah.
He has learned to trust that when he asks you for something, mm-hmm. he's going to get a follow-through.
Yeah.
He knows that you're not going to hurt him.
That's right.
He knows you're going to listen. So he knows that you're going to support him, no matter what happens.
And you know, this is important to say too, is that Ted's very supportive of me. Very supportive of me. This man right here takes care of me. And he would do anything for me. Yeah. You know. But you know, it's not just me though. I mean, everybody. Mm-hmm. If they ask Ted for anything, Ted's just right up there doing it, you know.
And again, Linda, that and with you and Ted, you have a balance. The other common issue for schizophrenics oftentimes is, because many of them are so vulnerable, they're so easy to kind of talk to and get them to do things. Sometimes they get taken advantage of.
That's it.
And that's scary, because if they don't have somebody to help them through that process, somebody they trust, they can get very hurt. And that will drive them into their shell, and that'll do the voices even louder.
And you know that's happened. And when that's happened, Ted's been able to communicate that to me. So then, therefore, I'm able to say something when something like that happens. But I want to get back to Ted a little bit, too, is that I think he's high function. I mean, he's been working as a dishwasher since you were, what, 13, 14? 14. And he loves his job.
Yeah.
And, I mean, and what they always say, you know, is that the wife stays home and the husband works.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true, but he's a very hard worker. And he's always helpful at home, too. Always.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's got the true love for our cats, I should say. Those are our babies. You know, when I first met Ted, I was concerned, you know, because he'd never had children. And I thought that, you know, he'd probably want children. And he told me no. And then I had my big cat, Scampy. So it wasn't long before he fell in love with Scampy.
Yeah.
So after Scampy, I decided that Ted needed another cat for him. So we got Blondie. Blondie is Ted's cat. Scampy's my cat. Blondie's Ted's cat. So, and can you tell us some of the things that that you like to do? I mean, as far as like work or what you do at work.
I'd wash dishes at work.
Yeah.
Keep the place clean.
Yeah.
Clean the machines, pans and stuff.
And you do real good at that.
Yeah. Doing it for years.
And if you were to say somebody in the audience that was experiencing some of the same symptoms that you're saying you have,
Yeah.
how would they recognize that, and what should they do, would you say?
Go and get help.
Go and get help.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid of the nerves and stuff.
And then you wouldn't be afraid to like go see Joyce or somebody like that too.
Don't be afraid. Go see Joyce.
I think the other thing,
Some
though,
people get afraid.
some people get. You're absolutely right.
hide and stuff.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's important here is Ted is saying that he would come and see someone like me, but I think one of the things that happens is if it wasn't for Linda and her ability to trust and show him that he can trust people, I don't know that Ted would just walk in and get help. I think, Ted, you mentioned that your brother, you trusted your brother
I
enough
trust him.
to bring you to mental health.
Yeah.
So it's very important to have that trusting person.
Yeah, you gotta.
And because that makes it really a nice, smooth transition to that helpful professional. Because too many times people that are schizophrenic have been picked up by the police.
Right.
And when they get picked up by the police, one of the things that happens is the police actually call a mental health person to come and assess them. So this gets very confusing for the person who's trying to seek help. They think they're going to get in trouble.
Yeah, I know.
And I bet that's happened to you.
Yeah,
Yeah?
it does.
And I was quite concerned at one point. It was the middle of the winter, and of course Ted was still drinking at the time, but he was outside with no coat on, and I could not convince him to put a coat on.
Oh.
I was really concerned about him, and I couldn't get him to give me permission to admit him to a hospital, because he hadn't been in the hospital for such a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then after he quit drinking, and after a while, he knew. Well, I had told him that I thought that he needed to go to the hospital for a while. He was able to do that, and I think what helped too is that I was right there. I went and saw him. I supported him, you know, and I think that's what made it easier for him to go the last time too. And if he needed to go anytime in the future, because he knows when he goes, it's a matter of probably medication change.
Yeah.
And I think Ted also knows that, and he's learned this by the process, that when he goes to the hospital, he's not going to stay there.
Right.
That is a huge fear, not just for schizophrenics, but
for me
anyone
too.
that has a mental illness.
That's right.
They're really afraid if they go into that psychiatric ward that they're not going to come back out. And Ted has experienced that. He's gone in, he feels better when he comes back out.
Yeah.
So you've got that.
Yeah. It's a good thing.
It's a good thing. So you see that as a positive thing, not the negative.
Yeah. Got to be positive.
And Ted, you mentioned another very important thing, and that is you mentioned that you have been working at your job, doing your job that you started when you were 14. You learned a skill at 14.
Yeah, dishwashing skill.
One of the very positive things about people with schizophrenia is
hard to get a job.
It is hard to get a job, but the thing that employers need to know is once that you train them on a specific job, they are so in tune with detail.
That's right. Yeah.
They are so, because that part of their brain, the movie I mentioned to you once before, The Beautiful Mind.
I have to get that.
The Beautiful Mind is a wonderful movie and really shows about how that analytical part of the brain is really in high function. And when you called Ted high functioning, that's the part of his brain that works very well. And so he knows everything about his job.
That's right.
And he is doing a fantastic job.
He sure is.
And I've had a lot of people. It is very hard work.
when you're schizophrenic, it's awful hard to handle
It
a
is.
job.
It is.
You don't know if you're going to work there or not.
Mhm.
You know.
There's always the fear that someday
Yeah.
somebody's going to come in and take the job away.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, and I think that is a concern too. And we'd mentioned before, schizophrenia sometimes get paranoid, but I think I've recognized that, but I think I've recognized the solution also. Because when we leave the house, Ted gets automatically paranoid that maybe the coffee maker ain't off, or when we go to bed, the coffee maker ain't off, or the telephone is going, or the refrigerator is not running, or something. And instead of fighting them, just say, "Oh, everything's okay, Ted," because you know he's not going to go to sleep. You say, "Okay, we'll get up and go check it," or if we're downtown, go ahead and go back and check it. And I think that makes him feel better when I do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like having that checklist, though. It's the same thing with his job,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check
and it's
things.
it's a checklist.
It's
Yeah.
a safety
It is.
issues. Yeah, and it's like, you know, he needs to know where I am, and I really too need to know where he is.
Yes.
I mean, if we go home and we don't know where each other is, you know, I think both of us panic. You know. Well, we're getting near the end time of the show, but I wanted to know if there was anything else that you wanted to say, Ted.
Said it all.
You said it all?
Yeah.
You haven't got no more to say?
Wish people good luck finding help, schizophrenic people and stuff.
And you know you're my love of my life, and I love
Yeah.
you to pieces.
Yeah.
Does that mean I get a kiss?
Yeah.
Thanks. Well, Joyce, I'd like to thank you very much for coming on too, and hopefully you'll come back with us, and when we have other people share our stories and stuff like that.
I'd
And,
love to. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, and we'll have Ted come back too. He's going to be turning 50 pretty soon, so
Yeah.
he might have a few additional gray hairs.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is my love of my life, Ted Carbino, and he's always telling me I'm a Carbino, so now I can look at him and say I'm a Carbino too. So anyway, I'd like to invite you guys back because we've got a lot of new exciting shows coming up. We've got a lot of personal stories. We've also got some resources. So I'm looking forward to seeing you all again on our next show. So bye for now. Say bye, Ted. Say bye,
Bye.
Joyce.
Bye.
Bye.